All right, everyone, welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Gross from Village of Forest Park PD in Illinois. He has 26 years in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Gross. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so we were kind of laughing offline a little bit because when you and I initially spoke, you said that you came from a law enforcement family and you really tried hard to stay out of this business. And now here we are 26 years later. So can you give us a little bit of background and, maybe what you did to try to stay away and how you got pulled in?
Certainly. My father was a police officer in Cicero, a longtime police officer. My parents divorced when I was rather young, and my mother remarried. She started dating a Chicago police officer when I was very young. Ended up marrying him a little later when I was in high school. And I remember years and years ago filling out a little postcard for the Chicago Police Department application. And when it came in the mail, uh, I was discouraged from taking the test. Basically, what are you nuts? Don't do this job. And I'm a smaller statue. I'm only 5'8". I was thinner at the time. We gained weight over age. Um, I tried my best to stay out of policing. I went to college, got a degree in marketing. Out of college, I got a position with a technical firm and was working in their marketing department and did something stupid and got terminated. And I had just been married for maybe a year and a half, found out my wife was pregnant and started doing some informal interviews with people. And a gentleman told me I should read a book called What Color is Your Parachute? I forgot the author, but it was at least a popular book at that time in the late 90s. And it sort of gave you a guideline of career choices. And I read through that book because I had a lot of time because I was out of work and discovered that, you know what, I think this is in my blood. I should try to do it. And I started little by little taking police tests. I had my father, um, he talked with my wife about some of the strains that it has on relationships with the job. And after some conversation, we knew the strengths and the weaknesses. And I was just getting up to my 30s, and I knew I only had till 35. And the pay jump, it wouldn't have been a loss. I was basically doing a parallel or an equal jump. I wasn't losing money, so I figured that would be the time. Some good benefits, at least health insurance for the family, pension, and it's been very rewarding 26 years.
I love that story. I think it's so interesting that your family was like, no, don't do it. And then you're like, no, actually, I feel like it's a calling. It's something that, I want to do. And I don't know if you believe this, maybe this gets a little too woo woo, but I really believe that everything happens the way that it's supposed to. For you, it sounds like maybe that termination was the best thing, and at the time, maybe it didn't feel that way. Maybe it felt like really disheartening and, you have a child on the way and you're newly married and all these things. And it maybe felt really hard, but then that was the catalyst, to you kind of figuring out what's in your heart and how you want to move forward with your life. And now you've had a successful career. And so, maybe everything does happen the way that it's supposed to.
I think a lot of times fate might be the key.
Mhm.
Yeah, the job loss was definitely a gut punch. And when you're sitting at home, just watching the bills come in and not watching the checks come in, you have to make some hard decisions. I started delivering pizzas, doing what I can to uh, bring money in. I ended up getting another marketing job. Um, after that job loss, after a few months, and I stuck with that. But while I was sitting there in my office, and I think part of the thing too, I went from a tech firm that was very high speed, and technology was changing every 6 months, if not faster. And I went to a job that was a great company, but I was bored,
Yeah.
and I just decided at this point in my life I've got to do what I feel in my heart, and ended up here.
Yeah, well, there's no shortage of things to do in the law enforcement profession. So I'm sure that that keeps you engaged. But Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, part of resiliency, we talk about resiliency a lot in, the wellness space. And a part of that is like, how do you take hard things and how do you keep going? And then how do you turn those things into learning lessons? And then how do you make yourself better? And so for you to say, hey, like it was a gut punch, and then I had to keep going, like I had to get other jobs. I had to figure out how I could provide for my family. And then in that process was able to determine how I want my life to look and how I want to move forward. And you took action in your own life to, create not only a future for you and your family, but an opportunity for you to help others through, hard times, because now you know what it's like to go through hard things and you can help people to keep moving. And we all have those times in our lives at varying levels where, things feel like they're not going our way, or maybe we're not happy with our current situation, and how can we learn from others? And then how can we develop ourselves to keep moving?
Absolutely. Uh, Not everything's an up in life. There are some downs. You just have to, climb the hill, get over those troughs, and get as many peaks in your life as you can. And
Yeah.
not every day is a great day, but you could always make it better.
Yeah. I like to ask the question before we hit record of, what's the best thing that happened to you today? It's my way of finding, gratitude and positivity in the day, through everyone I talk to. And I love hearing different perspectives. And to your point, yeah, maybe not every day is a good day, but every day that we wake up and, we have air in our lungs and we have the opportunity to live another day, I think is something to be grateful for. Even if everything else around us is falling, how can we at least find, gratitude in the opportunity to wake up today and to, put one foot in front of the other?
Absolutely. And I get up a little after 5 and I run typically. Um, a couple days a week. And this morning, when I was tying my shoes, it started pouring out. So the guy I ran with, texted each other, "Well, we're not going to do it today, but tomorrow we will." And
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that little Annie song. The sun will come out tomorrow.
I hope so.
Can we just make it till tomorrow? Um, you had shared with me that there were a couple events that happened, a couple tragedies that had happened during COVID timeframe that really impacted your agency, but it was also kind of a catalyst for you guys and how you are offering and prioritizing wellness resources within your organization. Can you give us a little bit of insight into what happened during COVID and how that impacted you guys moving forward?
Absolutely. So I was sworn in as the chief of police with our department in November of 21, and it was the day after Thanksgiving that year. So just a few weeks after I received the promotion, myself and the deputy chief. Um, I got a call that morning. My wife and I actually went out to get photographs for Christmas cards or whatever we were doing. And on the way back to our house, I got a phone call from uh, our administrator. She said, "You have to go over to so and so's house. He's dead." And my wife knew him. I knew him. Uh, we were shocked and went there, found him. Well, I didn't actually go see him in his basement, deceased, but I was there with his wife and when the coroners were coming and whatnot, and we laid him to rest. I think it was about 2 weeks later, and he was a military vet, and he went to Lincoln Cemetery in a little farther south of us, from us in Illinois, and uh, the funeral was in the morning. So we all grieved. We came back to the PD, finished up our workday. I went home that night, and just before midnight, I got a call. Another one of our officers passed. Wasn't a COVID. He had a condition, and we think he died in his sleep. So within uh, basically a month of being a chief, two of our officers passed away. So that hit a lot of us very hard. And one of our sergeants started looking into a resource. And it was a subject that's worked with a couple different police departments, and it was to try to offer or try to build up like peer support, a chaplaincy program, and other health benefits. It's sort of some people shunned it, some people accepted it. Sort of not being used like I wanted to, but it's a service that we do offer if someone's in need. We have used it for a couple of our officers who've run into some issues, home life issues, and it's been a benefit for those who have taken advantage of it.
Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And, um, I think one of the things you said that I think is an important reminder is that I think anytime you introduce something new, there might be that resistance to it, and you said like initially it was like, maybe not getting the usage that you maybe had hoped for. But I think the goal is, how can we be as proactive as possible and build the trust and build that consistency over time? So, if and when someone does feel like they need it, they know where to go and they have a soft landing. And if, of course, we'd never ever want something like this to happen again. But in the event that something like that does happen again, then there are resources in place for that. And I think it's important that, in some cases, regardless of buy-in or interest, that it's still a priority. And so it sounds like that's what you guys did.
Yeah, we did, and again, a lot of people might not have been accepting of the service we offered, but we do have other outlets. The village offers EAP if needed. So that's through the Fayetteville Village side, not a police department. We do have another resource we use. I think it was last summer we had an infant death, and two of the officers were there. One of them has young children and was, resuscitating a baby who passed, and it had a psychological effect. So we offered both of them pay time off, counseling if need be, and they both at least talked to the person and took advantage of what we had to offer. So if we do see that an officer is having a problem with a tragic event or a traumatic event, well, if we get word that there's something problematic, maybe mentally, physically, because of it, we do try to steer them towards help. If they don't want to take it, I mean, that's their prerogative. They're adults. There are people that were at that event that said, I'm fine. I don't need it. But hey, if you do, it's offered. So we at least put it out there. We don't make it mandatory, but if you want it, we'll get it for you.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge that everyone is facing, and kind of asking the question of, you know, and there is, I think, a debate on mandatory versus voluntary, and everyone has their own opinion on, which one is right or which one you're willing to do. But I would say most, with the exception of maybe like annual checkups, most wellness offerings are voluntary, right? And I think the question is how do we make sure that people are willing to take action for themselves? Because you guys can provide everything under the sun, but if they don't take advantage of those things, it's never going to help anybody, so how do we encourage those conversations? How do we break stigma? How do we, make sure that they know where to go? And I don't know if I know the answer to that right now. I think more awareness, more education, to make sure that people feel comfortable taking advantage of those things. But I also think people who do take advantage of those things, it's really important to talk about successes. For those individuals who did go and speak to someone because it did affect them, if they had a positive experience, being able to share those things with other people so other people understand that it's okay, and there isn't anything to be afraid of, and it is something that can help you. And I think we have to ask ourselves, and this is like as an individual, ask ourselves what the goal is. And I think the goal is always to thrive, and always to try to be the best version of ourselves that we can for our family and, for our peers. And I think the more that people can share their experiences, I think the more receptive other people who are maybe resistant or hesitant will start to be.
And I think with the newer group you're seeing, that there's less of a stigma when it comes to seeking that type of help or that type of help. I know when I was a newer officer, and I'm sure my stepfather, my father, that help wasn't offered, and you got that help at the gin mill.
Yeah.
With you drank your problems away, and which led to maybe some other problems in the profession. And I'm sure people still do that. But I think there would be more of a stigma 20, 25, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you openly said, I'm going to see a therapist. Where now I think officers are a lot more receptive to it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it'll continue to grow. And I think that, I mean, I've only been in this space for 9 years and I've seen a lot of change in the last 9 years. Um, I think that what we're seeing is the older generation is starting to share things and say, learn from me, kid. And then the younger generation is, I think, still maybe like, well, I don't need it yet, but at least there's the awareness of like maybe, what to avoid. And so I think that that'll continue to evolve over time.
We could hope.
So one of the things that you told me that I thought was really cool and worth mentioning is that you try your best to make it a point to attend roll call every day and connect with your team. How have you been able to carve out the time to be able to do that, and why is it so important to you as a leader to show face and have those conversations and presence during roll call?
Um, so I go to if I'm here, I go to our afternoon roll call, which starts at 2:45. So that's pretty much our day shift and afternoon shift meeting together to go over beat assignments and what's going on for the day. But it gives me the chance to let people know what's going on from my office, or things I'm hearing from the village, or gripes I'm hearing from the community, and I'm also able to build a little more one-on-one relationships with our officers. Where I hope they realize that it's an open door. I'll put my pen down. I'll put the mouse down and talk to you. And it's a good way to hear again what the officers are thinking. It keeps me sort of in tune on what's going on in town, like where the problem buildings are, who the problem people are, and some of the recent events happening. I mean, I see them in reports, but it's good to hear from the actual officers. And when I go down there too, sometimes I'll try to share a positive message. Sometimes, again, negative stuff comes out of my mouth, but I think that's just the nature of the beast. But I do try to tell people at least every few weeks, hey, you guys, be sure to work out, or do something. Don't just sit at home on your days off. Go for a walk, go for a run, go lift a weight. Don't just sit and watch Netflix. There are times to do that, but make a little time for yourself. Go do, like you said earlier, go to the doctor once a year. Get that medical check, get the blood draw, for men, especially as you get older, to get that PSA test to make sure you don't have issue with your prostate, and other things that could be detected, or maybe something gets detected that could be cleared up with medicinally, or maybe they find something that they catch early enough that you're not going to regret not going to the doctor. And it's something I should have probably started doing earlier in life. I mean, I started going annually in my 40s, but try to tell people to do that. My wife and I travel quite a bit, so I try to encourage people to travel, and not just sit there and brag, but hey, here's the places I've been. Do what you can, and then financially try to be healthy. So there's a lot of reasons I go now. Part of it is teamwork, and I'm not just the coach; I'm part of the team.
Yeah.
And two, I want to hear from the officers. And if there's especially a need, I know when I first became chief, like our fleet was a real problem. So we had our dilapidated fleet or an older fleet. So I knew that that was important to the officers to get new squad cars. So I did my best to work with the village to set up a plan, to do that. And just little things like that. You'll hear something's broken. Okay, now I know it has to be fixed. Maybe no one had the wherewithal to send me an email, but now I'm hearing it from an actual officer or officers. So I know there's a problem that wasn't brought to my attention uh, through a memo or email, but it's something I got to put on my checklist.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that because, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different officers who have said, I've been at this agency for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and I've never ever had a conversation with the chief. And for you to say, hey, like, I'm a part of the team. I understand that this is a people business. And in order to support the people, I have to have conversations with the people and I have to understand what's important to them and, be able to connect with them and for you to put in the effort, because I think that's what it is, right? It's effort. And it's not a perfect system. I'm sure that there are times where, it absolutely cannot happen for whatever reason. But making it as much of a non-negotiable priority as possible to get in front of people on a consistent basis, have those conversations, and then use that as an opportunity. It sounds like you're using that as an opportunity to reinforce wellness and to, offer different strategies and resources that they can take advantage of. And I think when there's a constant reminder, sometimes we need that. How many times and I'll put this in a super, super simple example. How many times have we had a spouse that told us that we had dinner reservations on a specific day and time, and we're like, yeah, yeah, okay. And then like a week later, remember, we have a dinner reservation. You're like, yeah, yeah, okay. And it takes like 5 times for you to like finally be like, oh yeah, yeah, I remember, like I got it down. And so I think that reinforcement on a consistent basis of, hey, here are the things that you can do. Like try to swap out maybe one of those Netflix episodes with a walk or a run. Maybe we're not eliminating things completely because I think people get defensive when you like tell them like don't do this and like take it completely away. But can we meet you somewhere? Maybe instead of going through the drive-through 3 times in a day, we try to cut that down to 1 or 2 and we try healthier swaps, like, so having that reinforcement in those conversations on a consistent basis, I think helps to reinforce the behavior that you're looking for.
Yeah, and it's not something I do I don't sit there and preach wellness.
Right.
I try to at least put that into the conversation every few weeks. I mean, there's times I go down there and yeah, I don't have anything today. There's times I probably have too much to say, and a lot of times too, it's just sharing some of the stories. So I think that sort of transfers the culture of the department to the newer group. And when I sat down in the roll calls, I would hear the old stories from the guys that have been here for a while, and it's just sharing some of the crazy that we've been involved in over the years. And I think it's a good thing. And we just talk about, hey, there's a UFC fight on this weekend. Oh, did you watch the Super Bowl? Did you watch the Cubs game? So sometimes it's just simple conversations to show that I'm not some golden boy that's just sitting in my office spitting out emails every 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a human side to you. And it doesn't have to be all business all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like it. So one of the things you mentioned, and I want to circle back to, you talked about finances being one of those stressors. And I would say that probably financial wellness is maybe the number one topic that I think is going around right now. I think that there's more awareness around, what the impact of financial stress looks like and how that impacts the family and how that impacts, your performance on the job. What are you seeing as far as, the impacts of financial stress and, maybe what are some of those conversations or resources that you're looking to offer so that people can start to maybe be a little bit smarter, or at least be more educated when it comes to finances?
So I went to a training. It was put on. I think I can't think of his name from offhand. I want to say he's a deputy chief in one of the northern suburbs of Chicagoland,
Is it
and
Cooney?
it is Cooney. Yes, that's it. Tim Cooney. Is that?
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
And I thought it was an eye-opening uh, uh, training or seminar that I went to, and it was something I never really thought about until I went there. And I had a little credit card debt one time, or my wife and I did, and I remember being stressed out about making more than that minimum payment, and then seeing that statement come in every month, and just going like, oh my God, how did we rack up this much debt? Like, what did we do? And knowing that besides a mortgage and an electric bill and a water bill and a car payment, that and needs for the kids and just your day to day expenses. Now I have to make sure to pay this bill and pay it on time, and I'm paying an exorbitant amount of interest on this bill. And I guess I didn't realize what a stress it was until it was actually brought to light in this training. And, I sort of reflected and realized that that really did stress me out. And it's a hidden stress that you don't think about. When you think about stressors with the people you work with, I think the most common one would be relationship stresses and issues with your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, and or children. And I just really never thought about that financial aspect. And I it just it really again shine a light with me, or shone a light. Uh, um, and so we brought it up to our officers, just about, hey, we have a deferred comp, which is a 457B plan, and we try to tell every new officer to sign up for this deferred comp. It's like a 401k, but it's for people in the government sector. And we encourage everyone who starts here to at least put whatever you can in there. If it's $50 a paycheck, if it's 25, if it's 100, whatever you could afford, raise it up as time goes by, because that pension might not be enough. And chances are, in history of the stock market, you're gonna make money, and you're gonna have money that you're gonna need for healthcare and other incidentals that you're gonna see when you're older. So I do mention that every now and again, and when I sit down there in my diatribes and roll call, and just let people know, hey, try to get these 401, or I'm sorry, 457B. Be sure to put in deferred comp. If you can't do that or don't want to do that, there's other financial avenues out there. I know a little bit about doing that. Not that I'm wealthy or any financial guru, but I'd be glad to help you out. No one's taken me up on the offer. I know one of our lieutenants has helped people set up officers' deferred comps, and we have people here that have a little bit of a financial mindset. And with the credit card debt, again, I know how it is, and I would discourage people from getting into it. I did it just to survive, and realize how stupid it was and how much the banks actually made off of me. Uh, that's in the past, and I was able to take care of it over time by coming up with a plan. And I've said it once or twice down in roll calls recently after being at Deputy Chief Cooney's presentation, that there are avenues. I'll send people to his training if they don't want to hear me or take my advice, or maybe they're too embarrassed to. But it does create a stress that, again, me as a chief or other chiefs out there, or deputy chiefs or lieutenants or sergeants, might not even realize or think about it. And I think it's probably more common than we even realize.
Yeah, I think money is really emotional. And I think that you'll meet two types of people. There's some people who are not willing to talk about money at all. And then there are other people who are totally open to talking about money. And so for me, I wish that I had someone that, showed me how to invest early. I wish that I knew more, but, and this is going to sound really weird, I kind of lucked out in a way. And this is why it's going to sound weird. So I've shared this one other time on this podcast, but I had a hard childhood. My parents were both drug addicts. My mom stole my identity when I was young, before I was 18. And she had racked up like a ton of debt and credit card bills and like past due payments all on my credit. And it all happened when I was like 14 to 16 years old. So by the time, and I didn't know about this. So by the time I was 18, I had terrible, terrible credit. And none of the companies were willing to work with me, even though she had done something illegal with a minor's, information. But because of that, I was not allowed to get a credit card. And so I feel like I kind of lucked out because knowing me when I was 18, 19, I definitely would have abused that credit card and I probably would have gotten myself into trouble. But because I wasn't given the opportunity to have a credit card, I was really forced to live below my means. And I think that we all say like live within your means. But for me, because I didn't have an out, and I was living on my own, I moved out to live on my own the weekend after I graduated high school. So I was 18 years old, living on my own, bills, all the things. And I knew that if something happened to my car or, anything went wrong at all, I had to pay out of a checking account. I couldn't pay with a credit card. And so I think that helped me to be a little bit more frugal in a way and to live below my means. But I have plenty of friends, plenty of family who have had enormous amounts of debt, and it is so stressful, and it's so hard to get out from under that. And so, if we can have conversations with people early, and we can try to have more of that education so that they can be proactive and try to avoid some of those things, or maybe people who haven't been prioritizing it, how can we start now, so that you can get to a point? Because what I find is the people who are willing to talk to you about money are the people who have it. And the people who are not willing to talk about it are usually the people who are more embarrassed or, maybe don't have as much of it. And so how can we get people more comfortable talking about money because they have more money, because they were able to be smarter with their money?
Yeah, that's true. And but I guess the a takeaway would be there is an end. So even though that bill looks like it's the same every month, if you come up with a plan, you could make it. You could bring it down to zero, and it's a good feeling once you're not paying heavy debt anymore, and two, just have a plan for when you leave here because you're not going to be here forever. And I want officers to if they could bankrupt the pension system and live a long, happy life, more
100%.
power to them.
Yeah, 100%. I also think I saw something on LinkedIn that Deputy Chief Cooney and his wife, I think, just completely got out of all debt. I think they paid off like everything. And there was like a picture that he posted with his wife that said like completely debt free. And I think like they paid off everything. Like I think that they like don't have a house payment, don't have car payments. Like they're completely like in the green for everything. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, how many of us want that,
Yeah, that'd be a cool place to be.
Yeah.
It'd be a difficult task, and you have to make some sacrifices. I think it can be done, and trust me, I've made plenty of financial mistakes, so I might not be the perfect person to come to
Or maybe you are,
plan, but I could help you dig out of the hole.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that we can learn from everybody. We can learn from the people who did it right. We can also learn from the mistakes. And I think just us having this conversation is really helpful, for people to understand that it is possible to get to the end of this career and not have to jump straight into another job because you feel like you have to financially. There is a path where you could get to the end of this and you could have money and you could have time and you could have your health and you could have your family and you could have it all, but that doesn't come without effort. And the things that we're doing today are setting us up for the future, and so it's never too late to start. But we have to start at some point if we want that to be, the thing that we have at the end.
Absolutely, and there's something I always joke about. anyone who runs marathons or has run a marathon or has an adopted pet will tell you that they've run marathons or have an adopted pet. Well, my adopted pet is actually here in my office somewhere. And I have run marathons before. And I think you could translate that to financial planning or any other kind of planning in life, because when the end game is, let's say, the Chicago Marathon, I have 26.2 miles to run. How do I get how do I run those 26.2 miles? And it starts with a plan. And so, you know, the plans I've done, you start 18 weeks before the marathon, and little by little, you build up, you build up, you build up, you get there, and eventually you reach that goal. So if you just say, I'm going to go run 26.2 miles, you might be able to do it, but there'll be some pain involved. But if you take a path to get there and have a plan, an actual written out plan to get to that end goal, you'll be able to do it. And it's a good feeling when you accomplish any goal.
Well, I think having a plan is not foreign to you guys in law enforcement. You guys always have a plan, right?
Um,
It's like for the most part, you're like,
for the
yeah.
most part, a lot of times we wing it.
Yeah. But I think it's not something that's foreign, right? Like you know what it's like to train for things, you know what it's like to have a plan and a plan A, a plan B, and so I think again, it just goes back to having more of the awareness, and then hopefully these conversations will encourage that action. My final question for you, I know that you worked a lot to kind of build up the younger generation and set them up for success. What words of wisdom would you share with the younger men and women who are entering into this career today that, maybe you wish you would have known when you were younger?
When I was taking police tests, at that time they would do orientations, and I remember going to an orientation in one of the Chicago suburbs, South Suburb, and there was a lieutenant there, and he gave advice that I think leads to a happy career and a happy life. And his advice was simple, and it was, don't just be friends with police. So identify yourself as a policeman, but don't make it your full identity. And it's cool to hang out with your coworkers or other cops and share your cop stories, but don't let that be the only thing you do. Have friends that are accountants, are insurance salespeople, work at a grocery store, whatever the case may be, because it'll give you more of I guess, worldly view as opposed to just having that police mindset, which, again, police are great people, but you have to go outside of the police world and have sort of a universalized opinion about the world. And I think that's probably one of the best pieces of advice that I received, and that was before I became a law enforcement officer. And again, that was during an orientation. And the other thing would be with the younger officers, and it doesn't go as much back to when I started, but seeing a little bit of a difference now, and it's something we as chiefs and administrators have to. It's got to be a symbiotic relationship. When I started, if you were told to do something, you did it. Now we get asked like a lot of questions, like, why are we doing this? How do we do it?
Mm-hmm.
And it frustrates me because, I came from the school. We were told you just do it. And younger officers are a little more inquisitive and want to know why and how and where and when. And I think be a little more receptive of where we came from. And we have to be a little more receptive of where you came from. And I think it'll work out little by little. I'm starting to get there.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on here today and talking about wellness and leadership. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. I appreciate it.